Hey, hello, welcome to SportsBeat Live, the Kansas City Stars Chiefs post-game show where people who cover the Chiefs will talk about another victory with you guys. Give us your questions and comments. We'll get to as many of them as we can. We've got Sam Mellinger in the house, Bahi Gregorian. We have Sam McDowell, and I guess we're waiting on Herbie Tiopi, who will join us when he can. It was kind of a long game, went 3.5 hours, and the Chiefs were late getting to the interview room today, so we're starting actually a little later than we usually do, than we would like to. But hey, you don't want to hear about our problems, do you? No, I don't think you do. But we all ended up writing stories, and based on the questions that were asked in the to the few players and Andy Reid that we talked to after the game, I think we all kind of had variations on similar themes. And how could they not be when you're covering a team that beats everybody it plays, and not only beats everybody it plays, but does so in similar fashion. It doesn't seem to matter said it before, the quality of the opponent or how big the lead or deficit is at some point in the game. It comes down to the fourth quarter, comes down to a final possession, and the Chiefs win it again, 32-29 over the New Orleans Saints. So, Sam Mellinger, I know that just based on your questions, you're talking about resiliency and toughness and grit and all that. Did I capture that about right, or did I completely blow it?
I don't think I was being subtle in the post game, but that's what stuck out the most to me. And I feel like it's important to point out when we have the chance, because Lord knows we talk a lot about smoked sausage or Tyreek Hill going over the top, and we should. Those things are fun. But I think that there's a lot of pretty teams in recent NFL history that haven't won a Super Bowl, or some that haven't even sniffed it. And the Chiefs are a pretty team. They can do that. But they can also, kind of win a street fight. And that's what this game was. And it was, look, I get the Saints were playing without Michael Thomas, that wasn't their best self. I think they would probably say that. But the Chiefs were playing with, Eric Fisher's got a bad back. Wisniewski just got on after being, cut by the Steelers. Andrew Wiley's never played right tackle in the NFL before, and he's out there against a really good defensive front, and they won the fight. I get the final was 3 points, but that game I felt like the Chiefs controlled it from the beginning to the end, and there's no way they're able to do that if they're not tough.
Bahi, you had similar. You went a similar route, didn't you?
Yeah, for some reason, certain buzzwords kept coming up, like whether attitude or resilience. But I think Sam and I did try to, at least we tried to coordinate and take a little different approach. And one of the things I just tried to get into was what turns out to be an NFL record, that no team ever before has won 6 straight games by 6 points or fewer. And when you start looking at the mechanics of that, it really comes down to often, as it did today, the ability to make first downs and run out the clock when the other team has a chance to get back and either tie it or win it. And that you could break down that last couple minutes of the game as the whole game within the game on that. But the broader point is that they just keep doing it. And I think Patrick Mahomes spoke to that a little bit after the game and just kind of made the point that it's the teams that can win whatever the score is, right? Whether it's 40-32 or 32-29 or whatever it might be, that are the ones that are going to be real trouble going down the road. And now that they know this is a habit, this is a muscle of theirs now. I think
it's definitely a confident team. So Sam McDowell, how did they do it? What transpired tonight that allowed the Chiefs to go into the home stadium of the team that was rocking the number 2 seed in the NFC and take twice take 2 touchdown leads, right? 14-0 and then 29-15. And again, had to hold off the Saints at the end. But what allowed the Chiefs to do this?
Well, I wrote about the smoked sausage and the Tyreek Hill and the pretty football. What was interesting about this game is that the game was much more of a, I think Andrew Wiley phrased it, a brawl than I think probably any Chiefs game this season. So I think what those guys wrote is really well timed in that sense. But still, when the Chiefs got in the red zone, I still felt like they went back to their original selves, which is they got cute in the red zone. And the reason that this topic interested me is I dissected it 2 weeks ago about what the flaws were in the red zone. And I sort of wondered, how are they going to try and address these issues? Andy Reid brought it up twice when we didn't even ask him about it. So they absolutely recognized that among their few flaws, this was one that they needed to fix. And they fixed it by being themselves. They didn't fix it by doing what other teams think that they need to do. Even, that week that I wrote that story, I asked Patrick Mahomes about it. I asked Eric Bieniemy about it. And they both said, you've got to get the 1 yard. You've got to run the football whenever teams know you're going to run the football. That's not what they did today. They still, when you look at their 4 touchdowns in the red zone, they scored on basically, I think I phrased it as like a shot put to Travis Kelce. They scored on an option play that Le'Veon Bell said, I don't think I've ever run a play like that before. They scored on a Tyreek Hill play where he literally went in motion 4 times, twice before the snap and twice after the snap. So it's just interesting to me that they diagnosed a problem. They still thought, we're not going to fix this by being conventional. We're still going to play like we play and just play to the strengths. And their strengths are Andy Reid's creativity and their quarterback. Pretty much everything. And that's the way they're going to fix their red zone issues, they've decided. And today it worked. I mean, obviously they got 4 touchdowns on their first 4 possessions. They didn't score on the 5th one. But I still think the effort of what they tried illustrates what we're going to see from them going forward. They're still going to run these types of plays in the red zone.
They should too. And for all the reasons that you wrote about a couple weeks ago, I do think though it's also notable that they ran the ball not in the red zone, but in short yardage situations, more in the middle of the field. They were running, kind of conventional between the tackle. I think I counted 7 2 yards or fewer. They ran the ball 7 times in those situations and converted. And that's something we haven't seen a whole lot of. But in the red zone, you got to stretch horizontal as much as you can, because they're all about stretching vertical. But in those spots, you're right, they got to go horizontal.
And that was part of 179-yard rushing game. That was the second most of the season, and the most since the 245 against Buffalo. And it looked like that was a concerted effort, and it was pretty handy between the 20s.
Yeah, the Saints were much like Buffalo.
Yeah.
In that game, the Saints were playing back. They were kind of rushing 4, and they were getting there with 4 a lot, sometimes 5, and then they were kind of they wanted the Chiefs to run, but still, like, that's the bar. Like, the Chiefs don't need to be like this ground and pound team. They just need to be able to run the ball against light boxes, and they were able to do that tonight.
I think against a Saints defense that's better than the Bills defense, especially up front. And we saw them get after Patrick Mahomes. How many times was he pressured, tonight? It was a ton and sacked. I don't have it in front of me. I don't have the stat sheet, but enough tonight, and a lot of pressure. And I thought, on his fumble I thought he might have been hurt. He got hit so hard there.
I wouldn't be surprised if he was hurt still, right? I wouldn't be surprised if he sustained some injury from that. Sorry, Sam, what were you saying?
No, just 4 sacks is what they got. That play too, when he fumbled. My memory, I don't remember him. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm just forgetting about something. That's the hardest that I can remember him being hit.
Same.
Yeah, me too.
And he'd been hit earlier in the game. I remember seeing him take a hit that I thought was the hardest he'd ever had.
Steve Patterson says, praying we can keep Patrick protected. I think all the Chiefs fans are with you on that. But to go back to, Sam McDowell, to go back to one of yours, you described the touchdowns, except for one, which I thought was the craziest, was the McCole Hardman.
Yeah, the McCole Hardman one.
That was an unbelievable play.
Yeah.
Only good, 5-yard touchdown pass. Won't look good. This looks ordinary in the box score, but my gosh, what an incredible play.
Yeah, and that's what I tried to get into this in the story under the deadline. But there's two main items that I think that they're going to focus on in the red zone. Like I said, it's the creativity from the coach, and then it's just put the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands and let him make a play on some other options. And that definitely fell into that category. I mean, McCole Hardman at the back end of the end zone. When I first saw that pass, I thought that he overthrew Sammy Watkins by just a touch, and it turns out McCole Hardman just back there. A really good play by McCole Hardman too, who had a pretty up and down overall day.
Past the outstretched arms of Sammy Watkins, though, for that, I wasn't quite sure if he was meant to be in that vicinity quite as close as he was.
Yeah, I don't know how many completions and even touchdowns Mahomes has like this, but when he's got it cocked like this, I'm thinking, oh, he's going to throw it away. That's what I thought, and that's it, because he had scrambled around for what felt like forever, and throwing it away there may not be a bad play, and it's probably a play that 30 or 28 or a high number of other starting quarterbacks in the league would have made. But God, it was and it was a great catch. It was down low a little bit. Hardman had to go down and get it and drag the back foot. Crazy play.
I thought just in that sense, it was a really sort of strange game for Patrick Mahomes, even by his own standards. I mean, he had to do more sort of backyard stuff because of the pressure that was on him, even than what we usually see from him. But I also thought at times there were, it's such a fine line between you never want to sort of hinder what Patrick Mahomes can do. So you're never going to ask him not to try and do too much, because so many times he does try and do too much and somehow it's successful. But there were a couple plays that I thought that the fumble where he just happened to fumble out of bounds. He got a little bit lucky on a deflection. And there were a couple more similar plays like that. That were a little bit unlike him. And I think maybe it was because he was feeling that he was going to have to do a little bit more based on the fact that the Saints were only getting pressure with 4 guys, and the Saints coverage is good. I mean, they're good when they've only got 7 guys, or when they've got 6 guys in the defensive backfield. When you allow them to have 7 or 8 guys back there and defend, there's not going to be a lot of guys open, and it's not to the fault of the Chiefs receivers and tight ends.
Mahomes had that 24-yard run today, and I think he finished with over 40 yards rushing. He had the 13-yarder in the first half. I bet he ran 250 yards tonight.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Being pressured, it's just incredibly on the run all the time tonight. But as Brian LaBerge reminds us, New Orleans defense rated number 2 today. They put up, and Chiefs put up 176. I think it was 179 rushing yards and 32 points. Absolutely. No, that was that absolutely true. And also keep in mind, it's fair to point out that Drew Brees was playing in his first game after missing 4 with the broken ribs, and he sure did look rusty early on, including what turns out to be a pretty big play in the game, the L'Jarius Sneed interception that turned into the Chiefs' first touchdown, short field. Chiefs hadn't been great this year in turning turnovers into points, but they did that time. And what was Brees? 0 for his first 6 for the first time in his 20-year career. He misfired on his first 6 pass. That was a hell of a stat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he looked, I mean, it really did look like some combination of rust or even like he was impaired still. You couldn't tell if he was cutting loose. I really did think that they had to consider lifting him after they went 4 series without a first down and all those misses. But one little 51-yard pass to alleviate that, I think, changed how the game looked.
It looked like the ball was floating. Like there's just no velocity, especially like outside the numbers. And look, I'm obviously not a quarterback. I don't really understand why he seemed to have more velocity going down the field than he did, to the sides outside the numbers. But I always think about these games when they're playing the Saints of like, that's a team they could play in the Super Bowl, right? Like I don't think anybody would be shocked by that. And if that happens, if that's the team they get, like Brees is going to be better than he was. He was good on that last drive. I think the Chiefs would claim a part of that. But he's going to be better than that if the Saints are the team they play in the Super Bowl.
Okay, we have a connected Herbie Teope with us. Herbie, what's up?
Woohoo! I'm finally connected.
Hey, good to hear from you. Good to see you. We have not talked about injuries, and there was a big one for the Chiefs in the fourth quarter today. What's the latest on Clyde? What did Andy say about Clyde Edwards-Helaire after the game?
Basically, just said X-rays were negative, so that's a good thing. But I think what Le'Veon Bell said kind of let out, the MRI. He's going to have the results again tomorrow, which is typical because typically on Mondays is when you do that kind of stuff. This is one of it certainly looked bad on the replays, the way he was twisted and contorted up there. And you got to be concerned he was unable to put any weight on that left leg as he was being helped off the field, arms around both trainers. And so that's obviously concern with Le'Veon Bell being injured now with the postseason starting in a matter of weeks.
Yeah, it looked bad the way he was bent over, and when Andy Reid comes out on the field, it's a concerning moment. So hey Herbie, we have talked about the makeshift, at least the makeshift right side of the offensive line. How do you think it turned out for them tonight?
Well, it started out ugly, that's for sure. Yeah, I had it written down here. Hold up, give me 1 second here. I mean, throughout the first quarter there, the quarterback hits, the sacks. I think Mahomes was sacked 3 times in the first half, and then 6 quarterback hits. But the majority of that came off the left side there because, even Eric Fisher was having issues against Trey Hendrickson. Mahomes, he basically said, hey, they battled through it. They calmed down, they settled down, and as the game wore on, they got better. But, they certainly had their share of issues.
Yeah, they did. But I know Andy Reid. Look, he's not going to criticize anybody ever, right? After a game, but he did remind us that look, Andrew Wiley playing tackle for the first time this year, and Wisniewski playing in his first game for the Chiefs this season, right? There was just some differences for the Chiefs, and Eric Fisher playing with his back. So. I think we asked you about this last week, and nothing's changed about Mitchell Schwartz. We're just waiting on news for him, right?
Yes, that's basically it. Last week was the first week that he would have been eligible to be designated return to practice. The fact that they didn't do that, and I'm going to say this, I don't think they need to do it until the end of the year anyway. You got two games here where they should be able to win against the Falcons and the Chargers, unless you want to give him some game action before the postseason. But he's a guy you don't want to risk getting hurt. You want to save him for the postseason. If Wiley and Wisniewski is going to be the long-term answer there, while Remmers is also dealing with a back injury, and go ahead and let Schwartz come back, designate him return to practice, but don't necessarily bring him back off of injured reserve. Just let him get his repetition during practice.
The Chiefs are moving into a place at 13-1 now that, depending on the results of some other games, starting with Pittsburgh, Cincinnati tomorrow, can find themselves in a position to have the number 1 seed clinched before Week 17. And we'll get into that, if and when it happens. And do you give starters a week off? Andy Reid's done it both ways in his career. He's given starters when he's locked into a seed, he's given starters a rest in Week 17, and at other times he hasn't. My thought is, that's you give starters a rest in Week 17, and that's 2 weeks off before they see action again. So people are asking about that, and we can get into that as as that unfolds. But I'll bring up another stat, something I worked on tonight. Obviously the Chiefs went undefeated on the road this year. And do you know that as of the end of the Chiefs game tonight, road teams had a winning record against home teams in the NFL this year by 1 game? That seemed crazy to me, but look, it's, I think when you've got Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey and Hill, and it doesn't matter where you play, and you got weapons that the Chiefs have. It doesn't matter who you play. You're going to be better, and the Chiefs have just been better than everybody they played except for the Raiders this year. And you think you can make a pretty compelling case that the best 4 wins that the Chiefs have had this year, not Ravens, but let's say Bills, Dolphins, those teams are in the playoffs if the season ended today. Saints and Buccaneers, those teams would be in the playoffs if the season ended today. All on the road. Chiefs won them all. So it's, I don't know, what is this? So again, kind of circle back to where we started. This team's tough. It's resilient. It finds a way to win. It keeps things interesting. I noticed tonight on who does Chris Sims work for? Is it NBC? I don't know which one of the networks he works for.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's quoted as saying that the Chiefs are frustrating and fun to watch. I'm not sure I'm frustrated. I don't think they're frustrating to watch. I just think they're different. They're just so different than everybody else.
How many times a game do you see, and this is sort of just the Mahomes factor, but how many times a game do you see them do something that, it's just kind of bewildering and has to absolutely demoralize you? I kept thinking about that on I think it was 3rd and 9, 23-yard pass to Sammy Watkins.
Yeah.
That's a play that should be made. And, ho-hum, 3rd and 15, they hit Tyreek Hill for 19. They just have this kind of thing. I know fans can get a little exasperated if we follow on social media that, the ups and downs of any given game, but they have won 22 of their last 23. I don't know how frustrating they really are.
Frustrating is still to play against. I mean, that.
Yeah, that must be what
I think about that all the time, about just how obnoxious they would be to try to game plan against, because you have to outplay them every little way, because it's just like there's this dam of water, and if you leave like one little hole out, it's just gonna bust through, and you're gonna start trying to swim. They're just that was it, the third and the one to Watkins early when Mahomes gets out to the right side, and I forgot who the pass rusher was, but yeah, it was a Jordan. Smart player, because he was doing exactly what he should. He was taking the sideline and forcing Mahomes in. But I don't know how many times you've seen that where Mahomes, there's just this space right ahead, and he just goes straight ahead and then throws it downfield. It's just, God, that would be. I thought that's what you were going to say about Chris Sims, is that he's like, they're fun to watch, and God, they would be frustrating to play against. You can't expect them to be perfect all the time, right?
No, not as long as you have to. Go ahead, Herbie.
His point probably has to do with, because of all the star power the Chiefs have. It's like when you see them on paper, you expect them to blow out opponents. You want the 10 to 20 point wins, and that's just not happening. This is the National Football League, where blowouts aren't as commonplace as a lot of people think. I mean, you're not going to play the Jets every week. You're not going to play who else have the Saints, or excuse me, the Chiefs blown out all the time. The Broncos, you're not going to play them every week. So when you have all that star power, there's this conventional wisdom, you're expecting a blowout win, and it just doesn't happen. So when you hear people say that they're fun to watch, absolutely, they're frustrating to watch. That may have something to do with it, because they're not blowing people out.
There's one other possibility, and that's that maybe Chris Sims is putting some money on the Chiefs, because they have not covered now in 6 straight games, and the last 4 have been brutal beats. So that's a theory I'm throwing out there.
Well, and maybe that explains why Demarcus Robinson was returning a punt at the end of the first half.
Yeah, I mean, they're also incredibly entertaining for multiple reasons. I mean, that was the most entertaining play of the game.
Andy Gallo had the tweet of the night. Yeah, he had something there if he broke all 6 tackles. That actually had to do that.
Oh my gosh!
I tell you what, this is true. I can say this with all honesty. You kind of hold your breath every time Tyreek Hill gets the ball, because you just don't know what he might be able to do. Like, he really could go anytime. I feel the same way, only opposite with DeMarcus at this point. You never know what hijinks will ensue. I mean, it's really he makes me nervous just watching him touch the ball.
I'm ready every time he touches the ball. I'm ready for something.
Well, I'll tell you where DeMarcus is pretty predictable. As soon as the ball's in his hands, he goes backwards. Before he goes forwards, he goes backwards. Man, God.
How fortuitous was that safety? If that's a touchdown, then obviously it changes the score. It's not 32-29 anymore. Now it's the Saints come out with a win if that's a touchdown. I just don't understand what Robinson was thinking there. 10 seconds left. You've got all these defensive players or special teams defensive players converging on you. What are you doing running backwards? And you don't even have the ball secured. And that was just mind-blowing to me.
It's his moment to shine, baby.
It's a shame we don't have the post-game locker room. What can you say? It's Hey, I want to just note one other thing real quick, because it shows how this hasn't gotten old. Blair and I end up watching a lot of these games in here at the paper, nicely socially distanced from each other, but we can hear each other. And there still are a handful of plays every game, let's say today, 5 or 6, where you just kind of start laughing because of something Mahomes did. It's just that preposterous. I think today the one that really jumped out, Blair, was the 8-yard downfield pitch on the option to Le'Veon Bell, but also the Watkins. There were a few of those, but I still can't really believe we see this guy every week. I know it sounds ridiculous to keep saying that, all these games in a couple of years now, but every week it's something off the charts.
Yeah, my Mahomes tolerance has risen, since like I haven't hugged anybody.
Yeah.
Almost 3 years now, guys. So, but it is. I don't ever want to totally just like watch this and just think that's normal. Like we should like maintain some grip on reality that he's doing stuff that just I don't know that I was going to say shouldn't be done, but that's not right. That just other quarterbacks won't attempt.
I will say the only benefit of not being able to go to these games is getting to watch a lot more of the rest of the NFL than I have in a while. And watching Sam Darnold makes you appreciate Patrick Mahomes a lot more too.
Oh, you mean winning quarterback Sam Darnold?
Yeah. One in. Oh, I guess he hasn't played all 14 games.
Oh.
Hey, Sam Darnold probably saved his job today, though, right? I mean, now Trevor Lawrence is ended up in Jacksonville.
It's a tiebreaker situation right now. It looks like between the Jaguars and the Jets for Trevor Lawrence. So our buddy Larry Looper has a solution for DeMarcus Robinson. I'll let you guys go to the comments section and see Larry's Larry's solution. So, how about in terms of we get asked a lot about certain players and snaps that they've taken and who played and who didn't play. And it's tough for us now just because not being at the stadium, you don't see who's on and off the field. We don't have any more access really than anybody else watching on TV. But how about, did Willie Gay stand out today? Did anybody focus? I don't remember hearing his name or seeing him in the stat sheet.
I saw him on the field some, but not a lot. Not as much as I expected because I thought that he's been playing in a lot of their base stuff, and not playing a lot on third downs. And the Saints are a team that plays a lot of tight ends, and even their fullback gets on the field some. So I thought we'd see a little bit more of Willie Gay this week than what we probably did. I mean, obviously Herbie will have the snap counts tomorrow with the actual numbers, but I thought we'd see him more today.
Willie Gay, if you learned anything from last week, he's a starter in name only. It's because remember last week he started, and I'm using air quotes here, but he only played 17 snaps, and Ben Niemann totaled 75. I'm looking at the stat sheet right now. Ben Niemann had a team-leading 8 tackles. So, I mean, it's Gay talked to us on Friday, and it's just a matter of him still growing in this rookie season. I just think lack of OTAs and training camp, and even though it was abbreviated, that really hurt him. It really hurt his progress this year.
Ben Niemann is just such a funny case because 2 years ago when he was an undrafted rookie, he really shined in the preseason. And I felt like the response was Ben Niemann has to get on the field more. And now that Ben Niemann is on the field more, it's the response is, well, maybe not quite that much.
I'll tell you, the guy who caught my eye today, and everybody else's, I'm sure, who watched the game, was L'Jarius Sneed. The interception early, and then his first career sack today. Now he got burned on the late touchdown, but I mean I was close to making him the star of the game just because of those 2 big defensive plays early. Look, I think the Chiefs played pretty well defensively today. They gave up 29 points, but they get their share of the credit for a stat that's almost unbelievable. The Chiefs held the ball for 41 plus minutes tonight. That's incredible. I don't remember a game like that maybe I'm missing one, but I don't remember a game like that for the Chiefs this year where they just dominated time of possession.
Yeah, and then to go back to Vahe's earlier point, if we had an open locker room, I can guarantee that somebody would have been over at number 38's locker. The other thing that stands out for their defense is 1 of 11. They hold the Saints offense to 1 of 11 on third down conversions, and that's pretty darn good as well.
Hey, go ahead.
The points came later, Blair, but still, it's it matters that you stop them in the first 4 series and you get the turnover to set up the touchdown. I mean, that shaped the kind of template of the game. And everything else was kind of in reaction to that.
Andrew Brandt asks if Wisniewski's a starter for the rest of the year. I've got to think so. Don't you think, Herbie?
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I would absolutely have to agree with that. If Mike Remmers isn't back next week, and it just would not surprise me if that right side stayed with Andrew Wiley at right tackle and Wisniewski at right guard. You know, the crazy thing is here we are Wednesday, you know, because the Chiefs were pretty mum. You know, conventional wisdom was it was going to be Yasser Durant. And of course, you know, Eric Bieniemy telling us on Thursday, you know, he's a professional. That's what he gets paid for. So, of course, you know, I'm thinking he's probably the guy. But lo and behold, he wasn't the starter today. And I think they're probably going to stick with what worked today against the Saints.
I agree. Yep.
How come you're not bringing me into the conversation that you brought me? I entered late, and I heard y'all talking about Drew Brees.
Well, and of course, you were the one who had to ask Patrick Mahomes about the little Drew Brees Patrick Mahomes meeting after the game. Hey, look, nobody.
Can I log off here?
Nobody better qualified to ask that question or write about that topic than you, Herbie. It was, you know, your two cities were doing battle today. So, and I really enjoyed your Twitter feed today with all the photos and videos of Herbie on the field at the Superdome. Looked like a media game that was going on. When was that?
That would have been 2018. They do it every year, but I think that the video clip from that would have been 2018 because the Saints actually they streamed the flag football game live.
Anyway, you're right though. You know, Brees, this is his 20th season, right? This is Mahomes' 4th, and already Mahomes now this year defeating Drew Brees, Tom Brady, well, everybody, right? But those two in particular, the veteran quarterbacks. I think when we look back on this season, especially if it ends the way that we think it might, with the Chiefs standing on top again. Sort of absolutely a passing of the torch, changing of the guard, however you want to describe it.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with that. But, you know, particularly when people look at this game, and, you know, Drew Brees obviously started out bad. You know, there's no other way to say it. Was he rusty? I think he probably was rusty, but there's nothing to take into consideration. He's wearing a flak vest. And for people who have never worn a flak, I mean, obviously I wore a flak vest when I was in the Army. But, you know, what they're wearing there is not as heavy as that, but it is going to limit some of your movements. I think he probably had to get used to throwing in game conditions with that vest on, and as the game wore on, he got a little bit more comfortable. You know, it certainly helps when you fire a 51-yard bomb, but then that leads to other things because now he's loose. You know, he was able to get in somewhat of a rhythm, but the Chiefs defense, you know, they did their part. The Chiefs were able to get to him, they hit him. They sacked him, and so they were able to harass him. So, you know, I'm not ready to say his career is over because over the last few years in New Orleans, that's always been the thing. Oh, he's losing velocity. But he always says, when you look at the stat line, he always ends up producing.
Yeah. Yep. All right, you guys, let's call it a night. Chiefs have Falcons and then Chargers at home. The last couple of noon kickoffs for the final 2 games of the season. So we'll get started on these shows earlier in the day that I always look forward to, and we'll have some sort of offering midweek this week. We'll see who's around town and get you some Chiefs coverage midweek in the form of either a SportsBeat Live or a podcast. We'll have to see. So I'll tell you what, for Sam McDowell, for Sam Mellinger, Vahe Gregorian, Herbie Tiopi, and our producer, Beth Welsh, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.